Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Mike DeCourcy from the BTN and Sporting News with us. Man, how has it been? It seems like it has to be more fun this year doing your duties with BTN with all these games that are like this. The Big Ten has been is just a jumbled from the beginning. You know, everyone thought Indiana, Michigan, then it was Illinois, and they're like, no, it's Michigan State, no, it's Purdue. It's like Purdue settled in there kind of quick. They're the only first unanimous selection for number one this year in this current poll. Are they good enough to win a national championship though, with freshman guards? And basically, I'm not saying that they don't have a good team. They do. They've got great players, but Zach Edey, absolutely. Just like Indiana with Trace Jackson, Zach Edey, though, if something were to happen, they're done. Well, but it's the freshman guards more so that I think when you get into tournament and all of that stuff, having two freshman guards has got to, even though they have played spectacularly all season.
They're tremendous. I don't worry as much about them being freshmen as about whether or not, you don't win this thing without NBA guys. It's really that simple. And so the question is, if you look back, I'm trying to remember now, I believe that there has not been a championship team without an NBA first round pick since the Hoosiers in '87. I believe that's the last time.
Wow. Also the last time a team won the national championship without names on the back of their jerseys.
Yeah, it is true. I talk about that all the time with people. Yes.
Yes.
No, actually, that's not correct because Kansas, the road uniforms in '88 did not have them either, and they were the road team because they were a 6 seed. So I believe Kansas was against Oklahoma. You can look at it. Look for a photo of that game, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, I guess you'd say that does not use names at all. I guess you'd have.
Yes, so Manning was not on the back of the jersey, and neither was Miracle on the other four players. But you do you have those guys? Is Fletcher Lawyer an NBA player? I'm not going to say he's not. And it sometimes emerges later on. Like I remember when Villanova won it in 2016, there was no obvious first-round pick on the team. There was none. They were very good players, obviously. They won the championship, but there was no obvious first-round pick. And I remember us having a conversation afterwards. So does this break the precedent? And then the next year, Josh Hart became a first-round pick. And then a couple years after that, Mikal Bridges became a lottery pick. And then it all sort of, blew that concept out of the water. So that would have to be Purdue. If Purdue is to win this, they either break precedent or Fletcher Lawyer develops into a first-round pick, or Braden Smith grows 4 inches and then he's an automatic lottery pick.
I don't see either of those two happening.
So that's the question. The break precedent, it's always out there. And if there was ever a year to do that, because I think somebody in some sense is going to break a precedent this year, or I wrote an article last February or March about a concept I call the Jimmy Black exception. In '82, Jimmy Black was the point guard for Carolina. And now his teammates were Sam Perkins, James Worthy, and a guy named Michael Jordan. So the fact that Jimmy was set it up, get the ball to the right guy, play, guard your guy, point guard, didn't matter that much. There have been very few Jimmy Black exceptions over the last 40 years. And so that, so to an extent, it's not unprecedented if you go in and win this thing without a high-end elite level point guard. But most of the teams that win it have one. Whether he's an all-conference guy or whether he's a pro, they have that guy. And so now this year, I could see somebody winning it without that guy. So it wouldn't necessarily be a complete, total breaking a precedent, but it would be one of those unusual things. I don't look at any team in this country. Kansas is an example. Kansas now, went in and beat Kentucky. They've been on the one line this year. They still are in the fight for a 1 seed. there are very few teams that win this thing without a center who's at least 6'10". Most of the centers are 6'10", 6'11", 7 feet that win this thing. And they're usually, capable shot blockers, obviously rebounders, maybe a target in the post, but somebody that can give you a presence down low. Almost everybody that wins this thing has that guy. Kansas does not have that player. They start a 6'7" guy at center. Their tallest player is 6'8" in their starting lineup. So that's what you're up against. Everybody's a little bit flawed. And I don't mean just everybody but so-and-so. I mean everybody. And you can see that reflected in results like Alabama losing to Oklahoma by 24 points on Saturday, when Alabama entered the game as like the number 2 team in the country. Or Tennessee losing at home to Kentucky when Kentucky was out of everybody's bracket, out of the polls, obviously, and Tennessee's top 5, and they lose at home. So I think that's what makes it exactly what you're talking about, Jim. I think that sitting down with a bracket in your hand on Selection Monday, if you want to call it that, is going to be as big a crapshoot as anybody as you've ever done it when you sat down on that Monday or Sunday night or whenever you have to do it.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm looking for, say, Gonzaga. Oh, there they are. They're on the 4 line.
Right.
And last year they were one of the, of course, they lost a number 1 pick off of that team, but I thought they were going to be a little better than they are. They still have Drew Timme and a decent cast, but not a lot out of them this year. What I am a little surprised. I look up Indiana. You have them at 8 right now. If that's correct, I think I've got the correct.
That is correct. I will tell you, check at CBB on Fox early afternoon today, or my Twitter. I will obviously retweet that, and you will find them not an 8. Let's put it that way.
What is it? What day does it change?
Every Tuesday and Friday. We do it twice a week.
Oh, twice a week.
Yes.
All right. So every Tuesday and Friday, go to CBB on Fox and look that up. So just to hate to ruin the surprise, but where would they be if I looked at that time?
Above 8, let's say that way.
Okay, above 8. Because the only reason I'm asking, because I'm like, all right, the net rankings they're about 20, I think 20. What I remember, right around there. How much of the net rankings goes into your thinking? How much of your view, because you watched tons of it, the games yourself, how much of the analytics do you use? I'm just curious from a prognostic standpoint.
I will say, first of all, I don't use eye test at all. I think any committee member who uses the words eye test should be thrown off the committee. That's simple. I mean, I think that person should be said, okay, there's a nice restaurant down the street. We'll comp your dinner. That's it. You're done. It should never, ever be mentioned, because look, it's a simple theory. If all of us had perfect eyes, I used to say it this way. If all of us had perfect eyes, we'd all live in Vegas in very big houses. Well, now I could live wherever in a very big house because I can do it on my phone. So I don't even have to go to Vegas to place that bet that I'm guaranteed to win because I have perfect eyes. It's nonsense. So eye test should never come into it. You have to evaluate teams based on what they've accomplished. And that, as simple as that. Because again, eye test, okay, so let's say I want to do the eye test. Okay, so I watch Alabama and they blow Kentucky out of the gym. They're pretty impressive. I turn on the Oklahoma game. They get smoked by 24, and it could have been worse than that. Maybe should have been. So what do I know? I know that they're capable of anything. I know they're, but I know what
just like if Indiana were to beat Purdue this week, that's the same team that lost to Arizona and Kansas and looked terrible.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, there are reasons and this and that, but the reality is that all you really have to understand a team is what they've accomplished. And so when I'm looking and I'm trying to read into the mind of the committee what they're looking at, Usually they'll tell us in the bracket preview that they do in mid-February how they're evaluating. They'll give us an idea. And every committee is a little different because the people change. Usually there are 2-3 new committee members a year. Others rotate off. So, and there's always a new chair. So that person may have different views and try to guide certain things a certain way. So the first thing that I look at is your quadrant 1 victory, what your record is. That's the number one thing I look at. And then secondly, I look at what your record is against the first 2 quadrants combined, because that's essentially telling us what you are relative to what an NCAA tournament team is. That's the easiest, handiest way. Another way would be to look at your record against the field. That's something that you can only do once you've established a field. So it takes a little, so it's a little bit secondary in that sense. There are 5. If you go to a site that I use all the time, and it's really good and really handy, so I try to promote I don't know Warren Nolan, but warrennolan.com. It is a great site to give you what the committee will see, updated pretty much real time. And there are 5 metrics that are listed on the team sheet. 3 predictive metrics: ESPN's BPI, KenPom, Jeff Sagarin. Those are predictive metrics. They're designed to tell you if 2 teams met and the point spread was 7. Okay, if you look at their performance relative to these metrics, this tells you whether that line should hold, which side of the line you should be on. That's the idea behind those. There are 2 that are results-based. Kevin Palga, Michigan State administrator, KPI, and strength of record, another ESPN metric that I happen to think is really good. I think it when I see a team and I look at its resume and I think that's a 6 seed relative to what else I'm doing, and then I look at strength of record. Most of the time, I'm in the same ballpark as what strength of record is saying. So I think that's a more important metric than people realize. I think it matters. Your net ranking is another predictive metric, to be honest. I don't like the net for that reason, because it wasn't supposed to be a predictive metric. But if you look at it and you compare it to the predictives, it is much more closely aligned with those than it is with the results based. It's supposed to be a hybrid, but it trends toward the predictive, so I don't love it. Your ranking is not enormous in that, and I think to an extent none of the individual numbers is like definitive, because if I had a bunch of Creighton people yelling at me because I had them in a first 4 game last Friday before they beat Xavier at home, and they're telling me what their KenPom number is and what their net number is. And I'm like, yeah, but those aren't the only metrics on the sheet. Their strength of record number was around 48, 50, something like that. So they weren't, but they only see what they want to see. It all becomes part of the stew. But the number one thing, if you want to understand, is what are you doing against quad 1 and what are you doing against quad 1 and 2 combined? Those are the 2 most important factors relative to getting in and relative to placement. If you're a team like Wisconsin and Providence were a year ago, Providence won the Big East, but metrically they were meager. They were 30th in KenPom, 30th in the net, et cetera, et cetera. So they had a great strength of record number, but their predictors were so poor that it was hard to put them on a 1 or 2 line for the committee. But they didn't go a straight metric because they still were a 4, which would be equivalent to top 16. And like I said, Providence was somewhere around 30-ish when the season ended. They didn't get a lot of big wins. They beat you by 1, beat you by 2, beat you by 3. So that's why you don't score well in KenPom or the net or Sagarin, et cetera. They want you to win by a lot because that's indicative of dominance, and dominance is more reliable. So that's how you look at it when you're doing this. It's a complete picture. It's not any one number. It's all the numbers factored into sort of a stew, but the number one thing is, I love this. I don't remember who it was the first person that said this. The one that I hated the most, Stan Morrison, who was the athletic director and a former coach at at Southern California, used to say when they were teaching us this at the mock brackets, he used to say, "Okay, shirts and skins, who wins?" Like, that's the eye test. No, I don't want to know any part of that. But who did you play? Where did you play? How did you do? That's the definition of an NCAA tournament resume. Who did you play? Where did you play? How did you do?